The most pressing issue for the new president and Congress to address in 2017 is the federal deficit and its effects on the future.
Between debt and deficit.
Yeah, that's a big one, and a lot of people don't understand the difference, and it matters a lot right now. The deficit is how much we borrow each year. It's our annual gap. We take in taxes, we spend money. The deficit is how much short we came up. The debt is basically the cumulated amount of those deficits. So every year, whatever we had to borrow gets added to the debt. There's also two kinds of debt. There's the debt that we owe to the public. We borrow from Treasury bills, bonds, and notes from the public. There's also the debt we've borrowed from ourselves, which is we've borrowed from the Social Security trust funds.
The United States budget deficit is the difference between the total amount spent by Congress and the revenue received by the International Revenue Service. The United States federal budget deficit is currently at $590 billion, while the U.S. national debt is at almost $20 trillion. In your opinion, what could be done to reduce the federal budget?
What could be done to reduce the federal budget? I think that Congress absolutely has to get together to discuss what's going on with the spending, and there's an argument about raising taxes versus not raising taxes. They also have, again, they have to talk about how much to spend and what to spend it on, and if any cuts need to be made. Nobody likes to see cuts, but there has to be some kind of discussion in Congress.
Democrats and Republicans must come together and restore the fiscal responsibility that served us so well in the 1990s. We have to live within our means. We have to reduce our deficit, and we have to get back on a path that will allow us to pay down our debt. And we have to do it in a way that protects the recovery, protects the investments we need to grow, creates jobs, and helps us win the future.
In your opinion, what would happen if China called in their debts today?
If China called in their debts, we'd be in a lot of trouble. That's about it. Couldn't pay it back right now.
Is when we have our next economic crisis, and we can't pretend we're not going to, we will. We're probably closer to the next crisis than the last one, given the normal tenure of a business cycle, the normal length of a business cycle. We do not have the same fiscal flexibility we had last time. When debt levels are twice their average, which is where we are now, it's much harder to go into a recession and use your budget to help stimulate demand and to help counter what's going on in the broader economy.
In your opinion, does the federal deficit directly impact Florida?
Absolutely. The federal deficit impacts all 50 states, as well as the different territories that we have. It creates a hardship, and you've probably read in the news about government shutdowns and whatnot in the past. So yeah, the deficit definitely affects Florida as well as the whole country.
As I was just saying, affects the underpinnings of the entire economy, wages, jobs, economic mobility, our ability to invest in new things. That's all affected by debt levels.
We went from deficit to surplus.
America was actually on track to becoming completely debt-free. And we were prepared for the retirement of the baby boom.
In an email response from the Hillary Clinton campaign on Hillary's plan to address the national debt, said that her primary focus to address the key economic challenge of our time is to build an economy that works for everyone, not just those on top. To do this, she'll make investments that will create good-paying jobs, reduce government spending where cuts can be made, and in a way that won't harm our economy or hardworking families, and make the wealthy Wall Street and big corporations pay their fair share.
We increased spending dramatically for 2 wars and an expensive prescription drug program. But we didn't pay for any of this new spending. Instead, we made the problem worse with trillions of dollars in unpaid-for tax cuts. Tax cuts that went to every millionaire and billionaire in the country. Tax cuts that will force us to borrow an average of $500 billion every year over the next decade.
Bernie Sanders' plan to reduce the federal deficit is to end tax breaks and subsidies for big oil, gas, and coal companies, establish a progressive estate tax, tax capital gains and dividends the same as work, reduce unnecessary and wasteful spending at the Pentagon, and require Medicare to negotiate for lower prescription drug prices with the pharmaceutical industry. His plan estimates that $2 trillion would be cut off of the federal deficit. In your opinion, is it too late to fix the federal deficit?
It's never too late to fix the deficit. If the guys in Washington get together and work together, put aside their different, opinions, whether they're Republican or Democrat or some other party, work through it. It can be fixed.
In 2017, the President and Congress need to address the federal deficit and start creating plans to reduce the deficit, create a better budget, find out where money is going to come from if countries we owe money to call in their debts, and what is going to happen when the United States goes into another recession, with the United States being trillions of dollars in debt.